How's it going, guys? This is Real Murata photographer based in Tokyo. So back when I went to the Old Lens Fest earlier this year, I basically purchased a Kodak Gold 100 120 medium format film from Yamagen camera. And if you picked up on that video, I was contemplating, it was like sitting in my fridge actually debating on where to shoot with Kodak Gold 100, which expired decades ago. And I realized that if you actually live in Tokyo, this is probably similar across every single metropolitan like city around the world, but there's sort of like a service where you can basically rent a scooter or a electric like bike actually within Tokyo, which is called Loop, and they are actually really affordable, and you can basically like borrow or rent for them for minutes, from minutes to hours actually. And interesting enough, it's like a last minute or last mile like transportation method, which you can basically ride for roughly, I don't know, 10 kilometers, 20 kilometers without breaking a sweat. However, a long time ago, I photographed around Johnanjima area, which is close to Haneda, and a lot of people who live outside Japan do not know, but Johnanjima is a public park, which is officially the closest area which you can observe airplanes flying off and flying in towards Haneda Airport actually, so you can basically visually see them really close. And I regretted going there a long time ago due to the fact that it was located on a super remote location. It's like roughly 10 kilometers or 20 kilometers away from the closest station. I remember walking and it was a terror actually, but like I said in the earlier part of the video, there's something called Loop, which is basically an electric scooter which you can rent. I basically saw a port nearby. I thought, why not just borrow it and just go there once again and shoot with Kodak Gold 100. And for your information, this was actually right after I was getting a little bit better from my sickness actually. If you check my previous video, my voice is still recovering. But I honestly had to say this beforehand, but on this day when I went to Johnanjima, the temperature was 39 to 40 degrees, 70% humidity. And if you've ever been in that kind of environment, I kind of died after shooting only 8 exposures of the Kodak 100. I initially wanted to shoot with Kodak 200 to do a comparison, but I kind of died off due to the heat waves. And unfortunately, to show you guys the photos that I shot with my GW690 Mark III, and also the photos for your sort of like entertainment purposes, I thought, like, why not make this a little bit short, and maybe on some other video, my future video, revisit that area again and to shoot with Kodak Gold 200, because there were a couple of areas that I really wanted to like shoot for you guys because it looked really interesting in my mind. sort of like a clarification for you guys. Gold 100 existed around in 1997, 1998, if I'm right, and they kind of produced it until early 2000s. I can't get the confirmation, but I think it's around in 2009 or 2010 when they stopped producing it, and it got like delisted from the official website, and also consumers who commented saying that they kind of disappeared off the shelf. Gold 100 was actually stalled in terms of production, and if you guys do know or did not know, back in 2022, so roughly 12 or 13 years or so, the Gold 100 or 200 never existed, and 2022 was actually the year when the Gold 200 120 version for the medium format version was released, and that basically became a turning point in my sort of like film photography journey, because that was also the similar timing as when Fuji Pro 400 and also the 160 NS was actually discontinued. So I basically hopped off from the Fujifilm's betrayal bandwagon towards shooting with Kodak Gold 200 as my main sort of like medium format film stock. So that's sort of like a small history for you guys. For the images, I shot only 8 exposures, so I can't say much about them. However, because it was like expired roughly 2 decades ago, and it was in poor condition, although the box was in mint condition, a little bit of irony actually, I overexposed it by 1 stop actually, but because it was expired 2 decades ago, I was supposed to sort of like overexpose it by 2 or 3 stops actually, if I'm right. However, I just wanted to see what expired film and poor condition will look like, and some of the photos you could tell that it was underexposed, and especially I have to be certain in a point where if you shoot things that are backlit, especially expired films, I guess that's actually where the fatal flaw will show up significantly. If you look at some of my photos, I shot most of them backlit, which means that the shadows don't retrieve that much of a detail when you compare it with a typical Gold 200 that's produced and that's hasn't been expired. And also, if you get the lighting, and really interesting is if you get the lighting perfectly correctly, as in terms of where the light's hitting on your subject, you get really nice results after like shooting with the Gold 100, especially this sort of like vending machine, which was being sort of like tucked away on this sort of like what you call watchtower kind of area. Especially that shot in particular, the light was roughly 45 degrees on my left side, if I'm right, and it was showing this like really nice soft glow of light on the sort of like the architect of the building, and also the sort of like the vending machine. So there is actually potential for really expired Gold 100 in that sense, but you have to be careful, especially when shooting in backlit condition, because you won't get that much of a clean image in my mind. But it really had this really nostalgic look that's completely different from a typical Gold 200, which I really enjoy shooting. And also mentioning that the skies, especially if it's like a little bit underexposed, looks really blue in my mind. So that's actually a characteristic to note of this Gold 100. And also, last but not least, in addition to that, like I said, I'm hoping to like revisit this area when it's more pleasant in terms of temperature. Like 39 degrees, 40 degrees in Tokyo is like really death. It's like a death penalty in my mind. And like, although the scooter is like fully electronic and I'm not doing much, but you have to basically sort of like carry that when crossing the pedestrian. Actually, if you don't carry it across a pedestrian, you'll get fined actually in Japan, or you get arrested. So that's like one of the things, gripes of like riding that loop scooter. It weighs 20 kilograms or 25 kilograms if I'm right. Lugging that around isn't a pleasant experience. But yeah, if you're ever in Tokyo, like I highly suggest like renting a loop scooter, because it can make that extra mile much more easier than just walking 10 kilometers, 20 kilometers. So yeah, that's basically it on my sort of like coverage of shooting with Gold 100, which was one of my sort of like overall goals for this year, shooting with the predecessor of the Gold 200, which is a Gold 100 that Kodak previously created. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, found it informative. Hopefully my voice is coming back to life. But yeah, we'll see you next time. Peace out.